Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This will be a conversation on Coralie Fargeat's film The Substance, but all the elements surrounding it that may or may not have been touched upon in the analysis that I've just published a few days ago. If you haven't at the very least watched the film, then we suggest to definitely go check that out, as this discussion may spoil some things or even entice you to read the analysis. I'm also joined by my husband, Axel Parachute, host of Living Symbols podcast, which you can find at dionysophy.earth. Put the link in the description.
Yeah,
As mentioned,
yeah,
are you going to say hello? Or
yeah. The thing is, you've turned me into the substance because at first I didn't want to watch it. And then you kept talking about it, and then I kind of gave a look at it. I didn't start at the beginning, I started at the end scene. And then I saw something that was quite striking, and then I guess we kept talking. So I watched then from beginning to end, and I kind of tried to join you on what you were writing, right? Because this was a fairly difficult read. I find it's more difficult than the previous one, Eraserhead, which you wrote entirely yourself. This one I had to kind of give a bit of an input. It's coming from the Faust angle. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm glad we can talk about this because we can finalize what hasn't been said in the article. There's plenty. There's already plenty in the article, which is worth reading. We're not going to repeat that.
As mentioned, this discussion will be talking about the film, like interviews, audience reception, key highlights, and anything that could be further fleshed out, as Axel said. Having said that, we also plan to touch on the marked similarities we noticed between Guillermo's del Toro's Frankenstein, that was released recently as well, and between that movie and The Substance. So just watch out for that one since we don't want to spoil anything there either, since it's pretty fresh. Without further ado, let's get into the first topic, and that would be the politics or the feminist discourse that surround the film.
Yeah, just to precise this, we don't want to repeat the article. What we want to do in this discussion is how can we contextualize the substance? Because if you've watched the movie and you've watched what people read about it, and then you read the article, you'll see something's a bit strange in what we've discovered when we approach this movie quite seriously at the level of psychology. It's not what it claims to be, it's something else, or it's not what is discussed about. So we're going to try to contextualize the substance, where it belongs, what is actually the tradition it belongs to, and you'll see the answer is a bit different. So yeah, what's the first thing you discover on this article is a kind of feminism discourse, right?
Yeah, Fajia herself is pretty deep into it herself, and she has her reasons for it, as every other woman, I would think. I mean, I can't say I'm against what she's for it either. So yeah, so what really jumps out at you initially is this kind of going against the strict or inhumane standard of perfectionist body image that you'll find in Hollywood. Um, where people feel judged being a certain type, being a certain, having a certain look, where they feel they have to adapt how they look as well and change their faces and their bodies and so on. Now, yeah, most people kind of see this movie as like a big FU to the industry as well. And that's what they think that Fajia has also seems to be her main intent, let's say. There is definitely something to be said about the corruption that does occur in Hollywood, obviously, and all the exploitation and the power games that affect both men and women. Yeah, some feminists actually say against the film that it actually curtails to the male gaze and exploitation because it's actually kind of doing the thing that she's speaking out against, like by displaying, Margaret Qualley's butt and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, there's a very strong sexualized element in this movie, but it's kind of used in a bit of a satirical manner. So yeah,
The shots really linger too, like
yeah.
it's not, um, they're not flashes. They are really lingering as to kind of mimic that male gaze, you could say.
Yeah, the limelight or the projection is always this kind of. I mean, at first you think it's a male gaze, but I think it's something deeper. It's like being seen, like it's attention, And maybe it's even
Yeah.
being seen kind of, in a
Seeing too
form.
closely or
Yeah,
something. It's like you're just really being, and I feel like she does really capture that really well,
yeah,
especially with the different scenes that occur in the film, like with the in the nightmare sequence and anyway, so I wanted to actually talk about the also the body horror itself was also seen as an allegory on what women do to themselves, and so they were kind of using that. They thought that might be why she was in that using that genre film category to like express that.
yeah, for sure. This is a movie that's coming from a feminine perspective as a man who's watching this and who's kind of, let's say, attuned to the symbolic language that's used. It's very clearly from the woman's perspective, from the woman's experience. And I think this is to a credit because there's not that many movies or experiences that are so strongly anchored in the feminine condition. So yeah, this is, you know, it's good that she's done that.
We could talk about the audiences because we just that was sort of the feminist angle, you could say, and how it was kind of received from that circle. And then we've got the other audiences, which are kind of the general audience, you could say, and maybe they are part of the other circle too. But I kind of feel my general response for like that was that people feel really attached to Elisabeth and her plight being the
Mm.
main character and feel the sorrow and the sadness that she's feeling as well. And maybe even feel connected or feeling seen through her plight too. And then
Yeah,
there's the other aspect that I found that it was actually males as well who were really captivated by this story. And yeah, in terms of the themes, and it's also that it has a unique style. And many are also impressed about the technicality, the sort of innovation, and like this was 5 year process, hands on, and the kind of the nitty gritty of the making of the film as well.
yeah. It's definitely an impacting aesthetic experience, whether you agree or not with the message. It's gonna do something to you because she really like draw she emphasizes some aspect very strongly. She goes over the top, but it's not to make them grotesque, it's more to make them felt, like really this is how it's experienced. Of course it doesn't look like this, but this is how it's felt, this is how it's experienced. She has her own style, she's a good filmmaker, that's for sure. Sound design's great, visual language is great. The Yeah, most of it is great. She received an award for this, which I think you mentioned in your article. This is the first time a woman receive an award for a horror movie. So,
Yeah,
that's also
writing
an
and
achievement.
directing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, like all up.
Mhm.
So I guess we can now talk about why those like narratives or why people have so people have attached to those themes and why that's not enough to, let's say, explain the film.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read like you criticism around the movie, but I've seen people like, oh, this movie is so overt about how, blah, 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 blah. Men are vicious or, the industry or the sex. And yeah, but if we take this kind of approach, we're not going to be able to get at the strange aspect of the movie. And the strange aspect of the movie actually reevaluate those aspects that are so-called obvious. The surface level, if you stay with the obvious, you don't get to the weird bit. Let's say you choose to approach the movie with this kind of feminism perspective or criticism of Hollywood. And this is really synthesized in the figure of Harvey, right? Even the name, right? Much more obvious can you be? Well, let's dig into Harvey, right? When you watch the movie, it's clear Harvey is not a nice person. He's an opportunistic. He's probably a psychopath. He's self-interested. He's gonna use women to his advantage. Yeah, all right. Let's say this is an embodiment of someone that's not nice. And there's this scene at the beginning where what has happened? She's in the toilet and she hears him speak. It's like, oh, this old woman, right? he's talking about Elisabeth. This old woman, she's not good anymore. We need to replace her. Like, yeah, let's get away with her, right? So very cold, very heartless. So what happens when Elizabeth on the receiving end of that? You would assume a certain, how would you say? She should feel a kind of revenge or like, what is this industry? There should be a certain kind of, oh, but no, she wants to go back, right? Isn't that what the movie starts with? I'm aging and I'm losing my spot. And it doesn't seem to matter to Elizabeth that she's just seen Harvey as a
For
unscrupulous
what he
character.
is, right?
Yeah,
For what he
exactly, for
is.
what he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. There is something that's sort of said in the movie on the guy on the phone that's talking to Harvey. And this is just a small line that he says. And he says something like, oh gosh, I have to paraphrase, but we gave her, like we kind of gave her this show as like, in like respect to like
Mm,
her stature or whatever. So it was kind of like the reason that they had her in to begin with was that because, she's a big name and that show was meant to just go on forever, it seems like.
yeah,
And so that's when Harvey's like, no, like we just, I don't care or whatever, what we did, what we said. And we need to get rid of her basically. So it's kind of an interesting like little point there, but yeah, I mean, even still, like let's say you were given that handout, let's say for a long running show, kind of you kind of should feel like this it's kind of the end of the road anyway for me. I need to do something else.
yeah.
You can kind of tell like there's no creative like thing going on anymore. It's just the same show over and over. She might look different and she's aging and like she can't keep that up anyway.
Yeah, she should enter into what's called the second half of life because that's the biological process and the aging process. But no, she experienced this loss of fame as a car crash, right? If you look at the movie as scene after scene, right, symbols after symbol, when the billboard is being taken down, then she has a car crash. So you would say that the psychological impact of her losing that spot, is as if she was hit by a car, right?
Yeah, it's like a rug pull because you don't know like you don't know where you are and what world you're living in anymore because you've just been caught, you've been caught like a fish out of water or something like that.
Yeah. And so after that accident, I'm going to merge two scenes together, but she's at crossroad. And this is something you put in your article. And I actually didn't see that the first time I've watched the movie. So this is credit to yours. She's totally at crossroads because she just had this car crash, which should be, kind of going
Like a
into the
wake
second
up.
half of life or a wake up call.
Yeah, wake up call.
And now she has a choice, right? Someone gives her a USB called the substance. And now, because you watch the movie, you know what this is about. But as she leaves the clinic, she meets Fred. So who is Fred? Fred is this male character, and from a psychological perspective, this is an animus. And he says, "Oh, Elizabeth, you're as pretty as I've met you like decades ago. You're amazing. Like, let's go together. And he writes his number behind his cholesterol number. Is that right? Cholesterol number?
Yeah, he writes his number on his like heart, yeah, his cholesterol number document that he would have just received from the clinic or whatever, himself. You know, I would think. And that's
Yeah.
why they bumped into each other.
And so this is the most important moment of the movie because there she is. She's seen Harvey for what it is. She has this wake up call. She has a golden opportunity. You can't imagine a better opportunity of someone who would accept her as she is aging. And yeah, he's a bit of a normal person. He's not perfect. He's not fully healthy. And well, she can't. She can't. She can't go with him. If this was a nice movie and not a tragedy, she would have gone with him. And guess what? The substance, right? The thing would have no reason to exist because now she's aging and maturing gracefully, right? She's starting the second half of life as well as anything could. But this is not the movie we're talking about. In the movie, she can't do that, and so she's gonna go with the substance.
What's interesting about the numbers, like giving her the numbers, it's also kind of showing like he's kind of exposing himself in some
Yeah.
way, like to her
Hmm.
immediately, and kind of showing like it's okay to kind of be imperfect, or like I don't care, like it's this there's some mud on this paper. I'm going to give it to you anyway. Like it's very like natural, and just it doesn't it like the pretenses kind of fall away, and it's just is very open, and that's kind of what's missing in her world, where you have to hide and you have to keep things a secret and you have to put all the makeup and you need to like, veil yourself, from the world. So very interesting contrast.
Yeah. And so now we already have a kind of a view of Elizabeth is, despite the fact that she's middle-aged, right? Probably 50 in this movie, right? She has the mind of a teenager. This is what's called the Puella Aeterna, the eternal girl. It's an adult woman who has remained at the adolescent level. She struggled with the responsibility of adulthood. She can't really settle into she can't really commit to relationship. She has this idealized view of life based on youth and beauty, and she does not commit, or she struggles to commit to what would be real life, right? A real life would be what? Well, it would be probably something like children, probably finding a partner, probably something like with aging, right? And taking care of a body as gracefully as possible as it's aging. But no, we have none of that. The technical word here is she lives a provisional life. So it's a life that's not a real life. It's a life based on a kind of a idealized thing. It's based on fame. It's based on attention. But this is not what a real life is made of. The provisional life is not what human beings in their entire aspect are meant to deal with. They're meant to age, they're meant to experience other stuff. No, she want to maintain the fame and the attention at all cost, and that's going to be the cause for her to use the substance, right?
It's sort of like trying to get away from like, trying to find her true, like what her true path was actually going to be. I mean, even in the later scenes where Sue is talking on the TV show, on the interview show, she says something like, or at least I think that there was kind of like a crossover or something like that, where she's like, "Oh, I've always dreamed of this." It's still in this like, it's just an interesting point to make, because it's like you're still in the dream or something. You haven't like really woken up to like what else you could do.
Yeah.
What is your actual purpose? Because it's probably not what you think the dream is.
Yeah, she lives a temporary life in the sense of a life that's based on the role that she's playing. She never has a foundational, stable identity in herself. Never. She only gets this if she has the spotlight.
Right.
Otherwise, she's nothing. And this comes to my second point. I said like, well, the movie could have stopped if she went with Fred. And I'm convinced of that.
Well, yeah. I mean, or at least it would like bring different challenges, you would say. Like that could be its own movie. And
Yes, yes.
she would challenge to be with Fred, and she has to rediscover herself. And like it would be interesting as well,
It
because
would be an interesting movie.
that's a whole thing too.
But there is a reason why she has to take the substance, and this is wonderfully done in the second part of the movie. And it's when she sent a message to Fred, and maybe like, she's gonna go on a date with him. That's the second time. And Fred's like, yeah, let's go. I'll see you then. And what she does is she prepares herself. It's really well done. She puts makeup and she's beautiful, honestly. But she looks herself in the mirror and she's like, it's not enough, right? I can't accept myself. And so she changed all her clothes, all her makeup, and she looked herself in the mirror. And there's once again a kind of, I don't know how you want to call that, but there's a self-destructive impulse based on either idealism, perfectionism,
It's
or
not so
lack of
much
self-esteem.
self-destructive. It's something else. It's like you just, I mean,
Well,
yeah, I
it
mean,
is
I guess
self-destructive.
it does. Yeah, sorry, yeah, it does end up that way. But like the look that she gives herself in the doorknob is like, I hate you or something. Like I can't stand to look at you, or I just cannot, like, I can't compare. It's like a self-hatred or something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
That's what kind of kicks it off. It's like you just can't accept yourself,
Yeah.
and especially in comparison to this ideal state of beauty, which is Sue on the billboard. So it's just that moment was really also well captured. And yeah, obviously that whole scene is so tragic. Like I
Yes.
really, like I remember when I watched that one, I was really yeah, really disappointed that she was like not going to go. I was like pretty like, yeah, because I feel like when you're in that, when you're like watching, it's like, yeah, she's going to do it. Like that's going to be great, you know.
Hmm.
But then you
Finally,
realize,
yeah.
oh, this is a body horror. Oh, this is actually probably not meant to end well. And then it's like, yeah, and then you sort of see this like really downhill trajectory that goes into the self-destruction.
Yeah, so this is very much the bottom of the movie. Why do we have all this problem? Is because when Elisabeth is by herself, she spirals into this neurosis, and it's awful to see, and it's very relatable. Most women who will watch this can relate to it, and me as a man, I can feel the emotion of the scene, and I can see some of it, some of myself in her. And this lack of self-esteem, or however you want to frame it, it's completely hidden when she's beautiful. It's completely hidden when she's Sue. I mean, completely, okay, not completely, but it's hidden when she's beautiful. But when she loses that beauty, well, then it reveals itself fully. And so this is the frailty of Elisabeth as a character, is she can't look herself in the mirror. We don't exactly know why, but and this is the reason for the substance, and this is the reason why she can't go with Fred, because at a very deep level, well, she can't accept herself. She
Yeah.
can't look herself in the mirror and say, I'm worthy, or I deserve a normal life. No, I need to put this mask of beauty. I need to be this ideal person, so I attract the attention, and so I have something that fills me, right? If you don't have self-esteem, you need to draw self-esteem from the outside in. The point here is that if you're going to approach this movie with a feminist perspective, you're going to have to struggle with these points, because the first thing we see is that she want to go back to Harvey, which is a horrible person. Well, that's not a very good point for a woman, or for, like, this is kind of going back to your abuser, right? It doesn't fit really with, let's say, the message of empowering women. No, she want to go back. She's nothing without Harvey, as you write in your article, calling the shots. That's the first problem. And second, well, there's the condition of the woman. That's, how would you say? There's a road not taken. There's a story that's not being told, and the story that would actually be a feminist story is to show how she can gracefully enter into the second half of life, mature with Fred, accept herself. That would be, in my view, a feminist story, because it would reveal something about women, and how they can get away from Hollywood and not go back to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from our perspective, and your analysis has talked about it, I'm just putting different words, it's insufficient. We're going to have to change lens. And the one we use, right, is to look at the movie as if it was a dream. And so we're going to focus on symbols, we're going to focus on things like this, and we're going to see if there's a different story that emerge out of that. So that's the second part. If we do that, if we do adopt this symbolic approach, we discover, and this was a shock for me, it was a shock for you, that actually the movie The Substance belongs to the Germanic tradition, and we're gonna have to explain that. You want to say something? Because otherwise I'll take it from there.
Yeah, so Fargeat, she has referenced this film to be a Faustian bargain herself. So that's not like a hidden element at all, but and like this kind of whole, and I mean, even if you haven't read Faust as well, you kind of know that this is like about making a deal with the devil, so to speak. And yeah, so what was interesting is that when Sue enters into the film, I initially thought that it was a shadow figure,
Yep.
especially because later on there's really a shadow, like a classic shadow encounter that takes place as well. So yeah, it was interesting to sort of like for you to yeah define that in that it was the self coming out, and now you can elaborate.
So I'm gonna talk as if the audience has not read Faust. So as I said, the movie belongs to the Germanic tradition, and we need to pull Faust, because Faust is probably the most important German story. As you said, the first impulse is to think that Sue, as she appears, is Elisabeth's shadow, right? So when you watch a movie from a symbolic perspective, you will put the character and try to see like what part of the psyche are there, right? So if you have two characters, two feminine characters, well, the first idea would be the shadow. But there's something in the movie that does not follow that. It's the first shot, for instance, when the eggs split in two. There's a kind of doubling of the personality, and from my experience and from the literature I've read, and the encounter of the shadow is not a doubling of the personality. It's not something that comes out of you. It's more something you encounter, and also Sue does not really behave like a shadow encounter. The shadow encounter is very much a hostile brother. Here would be a hostile sister. They kind of have, they're very different from each other and they kind of complete each other. Whereas Sue and Elizabeth, at least as at the beginning, they don't really do that. She's a more autonomous thing than just a shadow.
Yeah, Faja actually, so the first scene that she wrote was of this birthing of the personality, birthing of Sue. And yeah, so in a way she kind of, and she does actually say, "Oh, what if there was a double of me or something like that?" She says that in an interview somewhere, and that was kind of how she started to write the film, was a kind of experiment, let's say like a mind experiment or a mind story or whatever, to kind of be like what it would be like to have someone um, that was yeah better, younger and so on, who could do the things that you couldn't do anymore.
Right. So I've read Faust, and what has shocked me is that it seems that this Sue is closer to Mephistopheles from Faust than she is just from a shadow character. I'm going to try to explain that. So in the story of Faust, first Faust started in despair. He said he read philosophy, law, medicine, theologies. He read everything, right? Hard studies all that have cost me dear, and so I sit, poor silly man, no wiser now than when I began. And I see all our search for knowledge is vain, and this burns my heart with bitter pain. So here you have this aging masculine character that's losing power, right? Think about the substance as the story said from the feminine perspective. So Faust is aging and losing his kind of power, and Elizabeth is aging and losing a
Beauty.
spot in the spotlight. So she's also losing power, right? She's losing beauty, which is different, but the it's the kind of same experience, right? That's how the Faust starts. This is how the substance starts. And what does Faust does? He's going to talk to his assistant Wagner, and he said, "Look, I'm in despair. I've got all those wild aspirations, and I can't do anything." And Wagner says, "Like, look, Faust, I can't understand you. I'm happy with my conventional life, and you're completely alienated from it. And you're so unhappy. I don't understand you." So here we have a split with the normal life, right? The same thing kind of as Fred. Faust cannot go back into a normal life. It's not possible. Just as Elizabeth cannot go back into a normal life. Let's go back to Faust. After this meeting with Wagner, he's ready to die. He's ready to commit suicide by drinking a glass of poison. And here we have a divine intervention, and here the church bells. There's a choir in the background, and it reminds him of the message of Easter and the resurrection and eternal life. It's not like Faust is a religious person, he's not, but it brings up like memories and it kind of like restores his self confidence. So, where is there a divine intervention in the substance? Well, that's the USB, that's the hotline that's given to Elizabeth. It's the same thing. In fact, if you listen to the voice of the hotline, you'll see there's something very special with the man speaking in the voice line. It kind of has a kind of a God voice, like he's not a typical hotline person. He's like, you can have the substance, and this is the deal. Do you accept it?
It's just very matter of fact. Yeah.
And it's almost like you can bite into the apple, but you'll have the price that comes with it. There's a kind of a
There's
very
no sugar coating.
straightforward exchange. Yeah, no sugarcoating, matter of fact. Do you want to do it? It's your choice. Respect the boundaries. So yeah, there's a divine intervention, and this is how Sue comes out of Elisa's body, right? After taking the substance. It's kind of in the reverse order because in Faust, what happens is he was ready to commit suicide, and then hears the Easter message, and then there's a black poodle, a black dog that follows him, and he enters the room, and he starts to growl and starts to become monstrous, and out of it, there's a human character that comes out. I mean, human. It's not really a human, but a human-like character that comes out. It's Mephisto. And Mephisto introduced himself with, "I am the everlasting no. I'm part of the spirit that always do evil but always do good." And they talk a little bit, and then he's going to offer the bargain, right? The Faustian bargain. I'm going to just read this. Mephisto says to Faust, "Stop making love to your misery. I'll do your will as if my will, every wish of yours fulfill." Faust says, "And in return, what must I do?" And Mephisto says, "I promise I will serve your wishes here in this life. A slave who does your bidding faithfully. But if we meet each other there in the afterlife, why, you must do the same for me." So he basically says, "I'll do all your wishes for this life, but I get your soul in the afterlife." And Faust, Faust is a bit of a weird character. He's so constantly unsatisfied that he says, "Not even a devil that fulfill all my wishes will make me happy. And so I accept the wager. You will never satisfy me, so if you manage to satisfy me, which he considered not possible, then I'll sell my soul." And so Mephisto says, "Under those conditions, I accept." You can see like the order is a bit reversed, right? She gets the substance, she initiates the Faustian bargain, and out of this, there's a Sue that comes out. So that would be the Mephisto from Faust. So it's very similar. And if you still not convinced, well,
Mm.
the very next scene after Faust and Mephisto does the bargain, they go to a witch's lair, and Faust is given a potion to drink that makes him 30 years younger. So why? So he can enjoy the sensual pleasure of life again. So the very next scene, Faust becomes younger, right? He was an old character and now he can live a youthful life. So you can see they're very close. They're very close. So what is Mephisto and what is Sue, right? It's not just a shadow. If you read what Jung said on Mephisto, because he worked so much on Faust, he says, I'm going to read a quote, "Thus, the supraordinate personality, that's the self, thus the self can appear in a despicable and distorted form, like for instance Mephistopheles, who is really more positive as a personality than the vapid and unthinking careerist Faust." Okay, so he's saying that Mephisto is the self of Faust. It's the supraordinate personality, it's the greater personality. And the way you want to think about this is when the entirety of the unconscious comes out as once, right? That's a mercurial spirit that comes out of you. Well, you got everything at once. You've got the shadow, the self, everything at once, and it kind of creates a personality. And if there's a lot of shadow element, right? If you haven't done any shadow work, and that's the case because Elisabeth is an adolescent girl. She's a Puella Aeterna. So there's a lot of how would you say? There's a lot of
Trauma or just wounds that haven't been
yeah
sorted through, and yeah.
potential that's not actualized. So there's going to be a lot of shadow, and this is why Sue is not a Christ-like figure of light, but she appears more of a devil. She's kind of a lower character because she's distorted by this much revelation of what's happening in her, right?
Like repressed, yeah,
Yeah.
repressed energy, or repressed yeah, actualization or something like that. Yeah.
And so this is the difficulty of the movie is that Sue is actually a kind of a devil of seduction, devil of beauty, a devil of ambition that was hidden all along in Elizabeth. But we didn't know that until she aged. Until she aged, now we can figure out that inside her there's really a very strong desire for fame. Maybe control is not really the right word, but to be on top, right?
Maybe some kind of creative power as well, just like wanting to change things or
Yeah, so the movie The Substance is a Faustian bargain, but told from the feminine perspective. In Faust, Mephistopheles appears in the room, and that's how masculine people experience things. So suddenly there's someone next to me, right? But for a feminine perspective, this is gonna have to come out of a body, right? Just like when you give birth, it comes out of your body. That's the feminine perspective. The creation of the second personality comes out of you. Whereas for the masculine perspective, it kind of comes, I don't know, it appears or you have to create it, right? So the perspective is very interesting. It comes out of a spine, right? It's almost like she was the cocoon for it all along.
mm,
I believe that's a key insight into the movie is to figure out that this is the Faustian story told from the feminine perspective. Without this, we can't get to the depth of the substance as an experience, right? The bulk of the movie will be Sue and Elisabeth trying to come to terms to each other, right? And it's a long and not exactly drawn out process, but it's a long and difficult process for them to accept each other. It looks like it's impossible to do so.
Yeah, it's almost like immediately after the first week, it's just like once the power is known and once the kind of the power has been taken back, let's say, through Sue, it's like Liz is like completely disregarded. It's like it really starts very quickly. So
It all goes downhill. It's hard to watch. But at some point, they first start to fight, they start to each other. But at some point, Elisabeth makes a breakthrough and she says, and this touch on the depth of emotion that's behind the stories. She has Sue, and she says, "I need you because I hate myself. You are the only lovable part of me. You have to come back." That's what the movie is about, and you talk about this in your article. The drive, the need for attention or the need for fame or is so strong that they hurt each other's, right? They can't come to terms. They can't really, despite the warning.
well, they just kind of ignore each other, it feels like. They just don't really even acknowledge each other in like a in a presence way, but only when it's negative. It's a kind that's why it's also this kind of shadow thing. Like it's like they kind of accuse each other of doing something that the other one is doing. And so this is why it was also kind of tricky to kind of, let's say, see them um, as just self or just shadow. And it's kind of when it's actually both. So that's what's interesting about that is because, yeah, they kind of do this kind of shadow projection stuff while they're kind of unconscious or conscious, when they're swapping between swapping between weeks.
Yeah, so, then there's this breakthrough of Elizabeth accepting Sue, but Sue does not accept Elizabeth and she beats her to death, or maybe close to death. That's a pretty sad happening. And when you do that, right, then she starts to lose a beauty, right? She loses teeth and she's very much at a desperate time because it's a big day, right? It's the newest show. This is the thing she's been preparing. She can't go higher, and yet she's losing everything at that moment. And so she's going to do something that's quite risky and quite incredible for us that are movie watcher. She's going to take the substance again, right? Is that right?
The activator again, which she shouldn't have because, yeah, it says, activate only once. So when you read that, it's like, oh, like there can only be a kind of mutation then that's going to occur with something like that.
For people who watch the movie, you know what we're talking about. When she does this, she becomes,
MonstroElisaSue.
yeah, you want to describe her?
So yeah, she's kind of this like amorphous blob, amalgamation of Sue and Elisa. Yeah, Sue and Elisabeth. And it's not actually clear that Elisabeth is there until a little bit later, I think, in the scene where she sort of is seeing the reflection through the billboard. It's like then you see Elizabeth on the back, and it's like, oh wow, like that's really something.
Yeah.
And then when she puts on the dress and I mean, yeah, and so the way that she's kind of put together, it seems it's kind of like Frankensteinian in a sense. It's like, the boob is here, boob is there, the eye is there. I think the bud is even right on top of the head. There's like a bud on the head, and then you've got Elisa, and then you got Sue, and then you got the multi breasts, and yeah, so yeah, it's quite something to see. It's very unique. It's a very unique styling. Um, yeah. And then when she puts on the dress, it's such a, you can just that whole dramatic, it's such a dramatic pace change. It's very well done in that way. It's like, finally you can just breathe, even though it's like the craziest thing you've probably ever seen. But now you can just chill now because things are okay. She's accepting herself. She's going to do what she wants to do. She doesn't care anymore.
Yeah, she puts this photo on top of her face, and it's somewhat enough for everybody to accept her. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
entering into let's say, the last part of the movie, probably the third part, right? If you want to divide it in part. Anyway, and here we're totally in a strange landscape. We really enter, you could say, like the fullness of the horror of the movie, and it's going to take a bit of work to figure out what the heck's going on.
Well, for me, it's like a borderline. For it really, like when I first watched it, I was like, "Whoa, okay." And then, but it was like funny as well. Like even though it was so like intense and and just that you have that dramatic pace change, but it was actually very humorously done, even though it's like it's a horror, it's a very like it's a horrific thing to see.
And so now, once again, how are we supposed to understand this scene? The typical interpretation you will find from what you've told me is this is a kind of destruction of the Disney princess, right? This is
You're
of
talking about the stage now.
yeah, yeah. So Monstro is going to go on the stage, and it's going to happen what's going to happen to her, right? We assume people have watched the movie. How are we supposed to understand that? The first interpretation we meet that's given to us on the internet and on by Fargeat herself is that, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but she wanted to be done with the Disney princess, right? So how would you explain that?
So yeah, so just the dress itself, yeah, it seems that yeah, so they wanted to make the color look like Cinderella and just destroy like this kind of image of a princess, which I kind of am kind of separating now from the princess as like this idea of perfectionism. So they kind of wanted to destroy, let's say, perfectionism through the image of the princess. And
Just
yeah,
to, I know what you're saying here, so I'm going to say it for the audience. The idea that either Elizabeth or Sue is a princess, I mean, depends what you mean by princess, but usually a princess is a virtuous person who has a very long training. She's taught manners. This is not what you found in Elizabeth and Sue. They're ambitious. They stop at nothing. If you say you're going to destroy the princess, well, you haven't built a princess in the first place. What you've built is the Puella. It's a girl who thinks she's a princess. It's she. That's the problem of the movie. If Farja says that this scene was built up to attack this idea of the princess, well, yes, but what kind of princess? And with your article, we read that this is the idealized, the teenager version of princess. It's not the nobility of the princess because, well, it's not there.
yeah, because what's really interesting about all of that is that she has built up the idea of the bad girl as being like the positive image, even though she's the one that's like has the male attention. So it's just very like it's I don't know, I feel like it's counterintuitive a bit of
Hmm.
the mask wearing of the characters because yeah, like I feel like that's it's not really clear what's going on there in that way because yeah, we have Sue as this like dragon energy kind of figure, and she takes on all of the male attention, and for some reason that's a good thing in the movie, and
Yeah,
it's like, well, actually, aren't we speaking like against that in some way?
yeah,
Anyway, and then yeah, like as you said, it's like then she's suddenly a princess, and it's like, where did that happen? It's just the image, it's just really just the dress in itself. So you can't really so this is kind of where this like feminist ideas come in and it's like, this it sounds great, but when you think of it as a whole, it doesn't make sense. And so there has to be either something else going on there and it's more beyond the conscious like effort that they've put into interjecting like their politics.
if the scene must be understood beyond this first lens, right, this first conscious impulse, I would say that Monstro is a visionary symbol, right? It's a play of the imagination. We seeing something that only a visionary experience can deliver. And I would say, that's when Monstro entered the scene, surrounded by all those half-naked women. For me, really, this is an angelic procession, right? They look like angels. They're naked like angels. Naked is usually sometimes used for a symbol of divinity. And something's announced to the public, right? It's announced to the congregation, you could say, something's announced to the rest of the psyche. Something momentous is, and the music will give you the clue. The music is the theme from,
Space Odyssey, 2001 Space Odyssey.
yeah, 2001 Space Odyssey, and that has the name, uh, Thus Spake Zarathustra. So that's the score. Okay, so something as announced by Zarathustra is presented to the scene. So this is the most potent music she could have chosen
So
for this.
profound, yeah,
It's so
really
profound,
profound.
right?
Like they say, yeah. I mean, maybe she put that in as like a humor to say this is the monolith. Like, have a look, this kind of thing. But at the same time, I think, going a bit deeper with the Nietzschean sort of reference, so it really adds way more to this. And I mean, yeah,
Yeah, so the sense, and this is where you're going, is now we're back in the Germanic tradition, so not from Faust, we left Faust. Now we're actually in the Nietzsche prophecy from Zarathustra. What Zarathustra says is, I'm teaching you the Übermensch. Man is something that should be overcome. What have you done to overcome him? Right? So Monstro is, to a certain degree, like Sue overcoming the human condition, and she appear as MonstroSue as the Übermensch. But there's a problem, right? She is not a successful Übermensch. I don't think anybody can make that case. This is a horror movie. She's a failed Übermensch. So when Zarathustra, from Nietzsche, teach the Übermensch, there's no reason to assume that this process will go well. No reason at all to assume. There's many pitfalls in the way. You have to be completely an utopian thinker to think that this process can go smoothly. And I believe that the substance show us that, reveal us that, well, this best effort, this best attempt doesn't reach the mark, right? Here's Monster Sue, she's an Übermensch, but the public cannot accept this. And then there's the scene where she's gonna give birth to something, right? She's gonna create something, and does it come from her eyes, right?
yeah, it looks like an eye socket or something, and it kind of comes out. But you could say it's like a vulva that was there next to the eye, as a kind of like, because the body parts are everywhere. So, but yeah, like an eye. It's like a socket, but it could be a vulva.
Yeah, so Monstrous is going to create something out of herself, and what comes out is a strange symbol, which is half boob, half sperm, right? So it's a union of opposite because it's masculine, feminine. So she creates this thing out of herself. And then people will judge the tree by its fruit, right? So the tree monstro, let's say she's fine. No, she's not fine, but the fruit she produces as a tree is not fine either. And so the whole public like explode and this is unacceptable. New Year, symbolically speaking, is a time of renewal, right? And so for this new year, the renewal, the presentation of the Übermensch to the stage, well, that's not acceptable, and so it must be killed, or at least it's attempted to be killed. And what happens when they do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like a man comes with a microphone stand or something like that, and he just whacks her in the head, but then like another one comes back. So
Yeah, it can't be killed, right?
yeah, it can't be killed because it seems like there is more to offer, let's say, because even if the first offering wasn't accepted, it seems like another one has to take place.
Right. And so she cannot be killed. There's something valuable about her. So as she's attempted to be decapitated, well, she turns into a fountain of blood. And how do you explain this fountain of blood?
Yeah. So what happens is once her head grows back, her arm gets cut off, and it becomes almost like a phallic, like appendage. It kind of just sways around, and that's how the blood basically escapes from her body to just spread on everybody in the audience. And this is very ritualistic, you could say. It's obviously an affront to everybody receiving it, but it's still like it's using blood as a kind of sanctification, or like it feels like it's ritualizing the act. It's not like defiling as such. And
It's experienced as a defilement, but when you sense what's going on, it's not just a defilement.
right, yeah, it feels like sacred, like this is like a sacred offering that's taking place. And even though it's like it's super chaotic and it's ugly, and it's terrifying for everybody, there's still something kind of special about what's going on. And this is obviously like, for probably some of the few people who will see this like that, because I mean, what's interesting though is this is definitely a scene that has like really captures people. And I do say later on that this is very much because it captures people in this way, that that it does have this depth of meaning to it,
Yeah.
and also that it's like, because it's like something that's so intense is kind of should remain in this like feminine mystery aspect of life in sense because it's yeah, it's the thing that people remember and it's the most intense thing that you'll see, but it's almost like something you shouldn't see or shouldn't be witness to. And that's kind of why I say that in the article.
Yeah, so if this blood is somehow both defilement and sanctification, it's because this Übermensch has been judged as not good enough, right? And for good
Unholy.
reason, it's an absolute monster. But then it's almost like she's going to transfer all the vitality of this project to the audience, to the rest of the psyche. So it's going to be a transfer of vitality. It's almost like you couldn't accept me, now it's your turn, right? So receive all the blood, receive all that's within me, right?
Or
And
like here I am.
yeah,
I've kind of made way for, let's say the collective to be free of their constraints. And I'm, leading the way in that. And here it is, even though you don't want it or something like that, or here it is. I'm kind of like absolving you of the things that you feel restricted by, something like this.
there's a kind of transfer of the sacred task to the audience. But this is experienced as as a bit of a violation, honestly. But that's how it is. Sometimes you receive a task that you don't want to do, right? But there's those two aspects. This is a horror movie, and as I've made the case, the horror movie is, as of this age, the closest thing we get to a religious experience in movies. We're not really, like, modern people are not really attached to, let's say, the typical religious experience in churches. We find it in horror. So this is what we're getting here. We're getting this kind of very special religious experience. And not only at least that's from your interpretation, and I think it's right, not only the public in the movie received this blood, but also the audience as such who's watching the movie seems to be involved in this. At least that's how I felt when I watched this. Like,
Yeah.
I'm on the receiving end as well.
Yeah, it's like a meta thing. It's like
Yeah.
it's not just I mean people will say, "Oh, that's the audience," and this is the scene where people will say, "Oh, it's the FU against the industry and it's so amazing and I loved it and it was just, full expression and blah blah blah. It's like feminine power, you know." But yeah, it really goes beyond all of that.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah. And then after this transfer, right, when everything's been given, if my memory serves me right, MonstroSue kind of decompose and
After she escapes into the hallway and then yeah.
she decompose and then with a last effort, a face and a hair like crawls back to the star. And the star is the beginning of the movie where her name's at. Do you want to say something about this?
Yeah, so she's left the body remains and she's on the star and then she's like re-envisioning her life. Or rather at first I thought she was re-envisioning her life, but actually what she does is she's re-envisioning the scene when she's walking into the hallway as MonstroElisaSue.
Yeah.
So as Sue as Liz, they're now like together. She actually sees how she's received as, let's say, this Übermensch character.
It's a form of unconditional acceptance, right? Because here she is, everything that she is, and everybody loves her. And so that's a healing experience. There's a name for this. I don't know if I can find it, but it's like a bliss vision before death.
So she has this recall of a fantasy, let's say, of like a waking fantasy. And yeah, as she dissolves into the star, because now she's at her death process, uh, what's left is a kind of a head, and it's basically just jumps at me as Medusa, the Medusan head, the Gorgon. And I mean, I don't know if this was intentional or not. It's I guess you could say that she's stylized it in a way that just looks like it's going to seep into the ground or something. But yeah, to me, this is like a Medusa. If you wanted to talk about the Perseus shield, that wasn't, you could say, talk about the myth. Should we talk about the myth a little bit?
No, I think it's fine. Everybody knows about it. So the word I was looking for is beatific vision. So she has a beatific vision, and this is something you usually get close to the end of life, which reconciles her with her life, I would say. And then we see this Medusa face that kind of dissolves on the star, right? So there's two things to talk about here. The first one is the dissolution on the star. And as we know, the star is how the movie started. So it's almost like Elisabeth's monstrous Sue goes back, right? She dissolves back into the starry origin, right? You write in your article
Yeah,
that,
Cosmos.
yeah, the primordial cosmos of souls, right? That's what you wrote. When you have a movie that ends the way it begins, this is called a, or at least it's a Ouroboros ending. It's an ending that's like the Ouroboros because it finished where it begins. So there's a kind of a closed loop. You know, the snake bites its tails. That's what the Ouroboros is. When you have an Ouroboros ending, it means that the there's a cyclical aspect to it. There's something that needs to be there's something that has not managed to break out of the loop. There's it's gonna have to be re-experienced. It's almost like it's an egg that has not fully hatched. So when you see, yeah, a movie that ends like it begins, there's for me there's this idea that something has been missed. And I hope from this analysis you've understood why. It's because the MonstroElisaSue, so the Übermensch, is not a successful Übermensch, and the task has been transferred elsewhere. And so this is where we end up with the image of the Medusa. The Medusa on this star is really maybe the last shot. And the Medusa, symbolically speaking, everybody should know the story of Medusa is you cannot look Medusa in the eye. It's a horror that will petrify you. So if you watch the movie and you see a Medusa, you're like, oh, I'm dealing with a horror that if I look straight into it, right, I'm going to be petrified by it. I'm witnessing a horror. So what does the myth of Medusa and Perseus teaches us? The only way to approach a Medusa is to use a shield of reflection. And if you take this at a symbolic level, I'm drawing this from Edward Edinger's text. This is not me inventing it. I'm picking up this element from one of his book. Edward Edinger in The Eternal Drama says that if we're going to face Medusa, we need a shield from Perseus. And the shield means a shield of reflection, a shield of self-reflection. It's like a mirror, right? You need something that you need something intermediary so you don't look at the thing, but you kind of understand it from an angle, right? You don't look the horror in the face, you try to see it from the angle.
I think it's similar to the phrase, you don't take something at face value as well. It's like you don't take it straight on. It's like there's something deeper to go past the face.
Right. And I believe this entire conversation in the article that you've written is to try to provide this shield of reflection, of self-reflection, of introspection that's totally missing in the movie. Why is it missing? It's just not there, right? The movie ends up as it begins. It's a drama, it's a tragedy, it's a horror. There's a story that has not been said, the one with Fred. There's a failure of the Übermensch. And all of this needs to be approached with a shield of self reflection, which I believe your article has provided, and this conversation will make another case for it. So, yeah, the theme of providing a shield in the face of horror, providing self reflection, is very much warranted in this case. So that's how the movie ends. This movie is a drama, right? It's also, strangely enough, Fargeat is French, but this is totally a product of the German psyche. So you found Faust, and you find Nietzsche's Übermensch, and you also find, if you look into it, the problem of Wotan, the loss of an eye, and this kind of visionary experience that come with this kind of ecstasy and this being driven mad, right?
Frenzied rage.
But at the same time bringing culture with it. This might be strange, but it's not because I know you, Rebecca. Despite the fact that you have no direct connection with Germany, well, there's stuff that you really like as if a German would. You have an intimate connection with Germany. Your favorite dessert is Black Forest. You have like a dictionary of German language. There's something in you that resonates very strongly with Germany. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, and yeah, when I went to Europe, it was one of the first countries that I visited as well. Maybe that was a cost thing more than anything, but I still traveled. Actually, um yeah, my main time spent in Europe was actually in Germany for that first trip. And yeah, Bavaria was pretty much my favorite area. Um, yeah, there's definitely something there that I'm drawn to. And the German language itself, yeah, as you
Yeah.
it's always like that.
And for me, for instance, I know my family tree. It's basically Swiss and a bit of French, and yet I'm compelled to watch Japanese products. There's no easy explanation for me to say why I'm drawn to Japanese culture, Japanese art, Japanese media. So, sometimes despite the fact that you have no biological connection, you can still be drawn maybe even stronger to a foreign culture than your culture. In my case, it's Japan. Maybe Fargeat is in this case. She's French, but this is a German story. And I would say it's simultaneously below Faust and it's also above Faust. Why is it below Faust? Because Faust, especially part two, it's a work that's so rich. There's not many books that come close to it. So I'm never going to say that the substance is as rich as Faust.
Mm,
However, the substance does some things that are not obvious to get in Faust and they're totally natural in the substance. So, for instance, this link between Faust and Mephistopheles, you need to read a lot of Jung to understand this stuff. This is where I'm coming from. But when you watch the substance, they tell you straight away, Sue is Elisa. You are the same. You are one. Don't hurt each other, right? And so everyone who comes out of this movie got this, which is absolutely impossible to understand from Faust unless you do really an intense study. So that's something it gets right. And here's another thing that it does that's not in Faust. It attempts to synthesize Sue and Elisa into a single product as a visionary experience for the Übermensch. I'm telling you, that's not in Faust. That's something. This is why I would summarize that the way you want to contextualize the substance, it's not a solution to the Faustian problem, but it belongs to it. And it's a pretty gripping vision of how to understand it, how to come to terms with it. It kind of shows it as a drama, maybe a bit of a pathology, but it also provides so many elements of understanding. So it kind of redeems itself in that manner. It opens so many doors at the same time that it's actually a valuable thing. Do you want to add something to it?
no, I think it's fine.
Okay. And this is where we enter the next part of our talk is what the heck's happening here? Because this movie relates to Coralie Fargeat's life, right? There's a personal context, but then it completely surpasses it. So let's try to balance those side by side. Let's approach this movie kind of as a Freudian person would and say, well, the movie is an expression of the person. Rebecca, can you tell us how this movie relates to Fargeat's life, right? What's the personal context?
Yeah, so the personal context for her that she stated in interviews is that she has was getting like this building of pressure, like to that she felt like she had to really do something with her life that to make a name for herself. Like she was getting a lot of negative thoughts coming in and just being like, you're nothing, like without, kind of making a name and so this was kind of as she was approaching her own she said in her 40s, I think she said from in my 40s or into approaching 50 or something like that. And that's kind of when it all started to come about for her.
Yeah, just to pause here, this is a transition to the second half of life that's not successful, just like the movie, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's also linked to Demi Moore, who is also kind of at the same age, same stage of life as well. And so they had a lot of like, let's say, camaraderie in them coming together because they were kind of feeling the same things and wanting to do the same thing. And yeah, so that's why their creative like coupling was actually really exceptional, you could say.
Yeah.
But yeah, but at the same time, so she had this like Coralie had this struggle of getting something out there and the negative thoughts, and you could say this is like this negative animus figure as well for herself too. kind of saying that she's nothing, and having this input in the back of her mind. And then on the other side, she also had this like negative view of herself in terms of her body image since she was a kid. So she had all of those feelings growing up, and just, comparing, to herself, and maybe not accepting herself. And so all of that is quite relatable.
Yeah.
But then you have, and then so when she started to write, it was that scene, the birth scene, and that's basically from then on, it kind of came together in a way. So, um,
Yeah, and to repeat, Coralie Fargeat, she has made a case that she's a feminist, and so she had. I don't think this movie is ideological, but from what you've told me, because I haven't really read that stuff, from what you've told me, there is some grievances that are trying to be expressed, and it's totally obvious, right? There are grievances that are part of the movie, just like Harvey is called Harvey, right? This is obviously this. She's trying to pack a punch here.
yeah,
Having said that,
I just want to interject before
yeah,
you go on. Yeah, so there was one more thing to do with this. She said the movie is a kind of like a splurting out, and it's like a splurting out of herself, and this
yeah,
kind of the violence is necessary, and like, she was very like uh very like conscious of like the effect that it might make onto people. Like she was very gung-ho, didn't want to change her vision. It was, yeah, so she was unapologetic in how people would receive the movie. And so, and yeah, so it kind of really matches onto this, into the fountain of blood scene, this kind of outpouring, this splurting, this violence, it's like anger, you could say.
yeah. And so this is all the elements that would, if we were to do that, reduce the movie to Farja's life. But I don't think that's the right move. You can see how this is the perfect storm, and Farja is the perfect person to express something that's actually a greater story. The greater story, as we've said, I will try to explain this, is who authored this story? Because it's not Farja conscious intent. You could say it's intuition. Well, in psychology, we says it's the unconscious who's authored the story. The consciousness like does its thing, but the unconscious also has structures elements with archetypes and stories and ties everything together by intuition. From what you've told me, Farja is someone who she knows when it's right, but she will not necessarily be able to explain it. A lot of artists are like that, like, oh, I got it right. I have no idea what I've done. So if Farja did not author the movie, but she got all those elements right, in psychology would, or at least in depth psychology, would say that it was authored by the unconscious. And so the unconscious provides us a symbolic story, which is really like structures pipelined at the bottom of what of the, let's say, the conscious element. And when you approach it as a dream, you will see, hopefully, you will see what we've seen. You will discover what we've discovered. And in the case of the substance, the gap between, let's say, the personal context, the personal story, and what's actually happening below it, right? This is this Faustian struggle from the feminine psyche, right? This is not like Faust. It's like Faust said from the perspective of a woman. So the gap between those two layers is so large. It's astonishing. I'm struggling with it. I think you're struggling with it too, because it's like, well, how do we explain this? There's so much depth to this other story that it's almost incomprehensible. What happened when you discovered that there were two competing stories at the same time? Like, how did you discover that?
Um, yeah, look, it came in like layers, you know. It's sort of like as you're writing or as you're discovering, it's like, oh, like that's what's happening, you know. It didn't come all in one go, obviously. It's sort of like I feel like it's really started with the animus figure coming. Yeah, this is kind of my, I guess my foothold in a sense. It's like, oh, it's not really Harvey, it's not really this guy who's like taking on the brunt of like all this like male, misogynist stuff. It's there's something else
Yeah,
going on. And once you kind of have that foothold, and then it's like, and then you see the other one, like this kind of like positive animus, it's like, oh, that could have been the positive timeline,
Yeah.
and then it's sort of like then kind of goes from there. And then when Sue comes on board, it's like, oh, there's something else here too, right? Like so, it kind of it kind of comes in layers, right? It's not a and then obviously that last scene was like, whoa, like there is, you know, that was really an unpacking, like a very kind of slow unpacking because yeah, it's quite deep and it's meaningful and it's like and it's just and there's that pace change and it's like oof, like what's going on here.
Yeah, from the beginning, we had this intuition that something else going on. And it did not take days, it took weeks and it took months for you to articulate it. And me sometimes giving some input here and there because it was actually a struggle to figure out what the heck this movie is about. We had the intuition that, oh no, this is something is very unusual is happening. But I didn't have a foot in the movie. I wasn't interested in doing that. But as we talked about it, I'm like, wait, what is she describing me? This sounds like something's really interesting is going on. And then as I watch the movie, I'm like, oh, this is close to Faust. Why do I say that? Because I've been studying Faust this year quite in depth, and so suddenly I saw the element matching, and I've told you like you need to approach Sue as if it was Mephistopheles. Nothing else will explain the movie but that. So yeah, that's how we got to this, and it seems that the story that the substance is saying, right, is not just a substance because when we finished the article, we watched Frankenstein, and you told me while we're watching, it's like, wait, what's going on? This looks like the substance. At first, I'm like, no, no, this is a bit of a tunnel vision. But at some point, I had to concede, yeah, something, Frankenstein, there's too many similarities between Frankenstein and the substance. So, do you want to list them? I've got my own list, so I'll complete what you found.
And I wish I was doing this while we were watching it because I feel like there was probably more that I missed, like now that I kind of have had made notes. So I'll just go through them. So the name of Elisabeth comes up in The Bride of Frankenstein as the wife of Victor, and she also comes up as Elizabeth in Frankenstein. But I didn't really make that connection. It's like, oh, why would he use Elizabeth again? It's like, oh, he was in The Bride of Frankenstein, but it's still another, like
Yeah,
it's
it's
still
still one
one,
element.
one for the substance, you could say. And then the next one that really kept coming up is like the most obvious one you could say is the crisscross stitch detail along the spine, obviously thoroughly used in substance and was a very important element for Fargeat and the team. And also then in Frankenstein, it's used on her elaborate dresses of Elizabeth herself, actually. Both Elizabeths have a crisscrossing spine detail, you could say. And then the birth of the monsters themselves are these like amalgamated parts, and you could say they are both invention because they both have this kind of superpower. They're kind of outside of the norm.
Yeah, they're both homunculus, right?
Yeah, then the homunculus, yeah. And they both have so Frankenstein has a wise old man encounter, and Elizabeth has a wise old man encounter as well. Frankenstein is also driven and unstoppable, like Sue.
Very much. So he's mad.
And he has this like wotanic, like he has this like Odin kind of like he has like this Norse kind of appearance in a sense, like in the later parts of the film where he takes the cape and the hoodie, like the hooded cape, and how he walks, and then there's the wolves, and there's all that presence there, like that's very European as Guillermo wanted as well. So that's my list.
Yeah, to my list. So as you said, in both the substance, so in the substance, at some point there's a portrait that loses an eye or it
Yes.
received damage to an eye, and in Frankenstein, the monster, the creature is shot in the eye. So that's also it's a minor thing, but when you start piling them up, it becomes a bit annoying. We also know that Del Toro has interviewed Faja, so
Yes.
um, we know they're close together at the personal level,
And
which
like he was very interested in what she had to say. And I kind of this was I saw that interview and then later see the film, and then it's like, oh, that's why he was so interested. Like he was very there was just something about the way he was interviewing her that I found really like respectful and attentive. And I don't know if he's always like that, but I feel like there was something extra about him interviewing her specifically about the substance because, well, now that we know, like he was working on those themes as well. And yeah,
And obviously, the big one that you haven't mentioned
yeah, now I
is the
just remember.
Medusa.
Exactly, yeah.
And so when Victor Frankenstein, Bill Frankenstein, he's in a kind of church-like building, and there's a flower at the top, a kind of yeah,
Rose window, I think.
rose window,
Rose
and on the back there's a Medusa. In fact, there's also a Medusa, I think, at the
at the
front door.
entrance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you've heard what we said, what it means is that what Frankenstein is doing is a monstrosity, and once again, you need a Perseus shield to approach the story of Frankenstein.
I think people know going in that it's a monster, right? But it's like the point is that there is the need of the shield. Like you need the Athena shield, you need the Perseus to like defend, yeah.
With all those similarities, I hope we've convinced you that there's something strange happening between Frankenstein and the substance. And if the substance is so focused on the feminine element, Frankenstein might be the masculine counterpart. So the substance has more of a mother-daughter relationship between them, right? And Frankenstein are more of a creator,
Father, son.
father-son, creator-creature relationship. But they seem to say the same story, which is the creation of the homunculus and the coming to term with it. And I must say that Frankenstein does this better because the monster lives at the end. There's a deeper humanization. It's less of a drama, it's less of a horror, it's less of a tragedy. It's a bit sweetened, it's a bit sentimental. That was the intention of Guillermo del Toro. But yeah, so Frankenstein manages something that the substance does not, which is the kind of
This harmonious to coming back together with the father, with the son, this kind of I mean he says it's a Catholic, he's like a Catholic story, it's a Catholic story, you
yes.
know, I think he said something like it's a Catholic Latin European story.
Yeah, this is the start of a reflection. I don't think I want to go further than that. Just, the topic is how to contextualize the substance. Well, if you understand the substance, go watch Frankenstein and you might see a very, very similar story.
I guess I would like to mention also, because I didn't mention it in the article and I probably won't mention it elsewhere now, maybe, that, yeah, Death Becomes Her is also kind of another interesting similarity, but only if it was just a full-on shadow encounter. Because there is an interesting scene in Death Becomes Her where they kind of come together instead of just keep fighting, let's say. And that's a kind of similar premise where, someone takes a potion to have their youth last longer or whatever, or to be youthful again. And they're also celebrities. And yeah, it's a bit of a fun watch. I think it's Robert Zemeckis as the director. And also, what's kind of funny is also the lady that sells the potion to the people who want it, like the people who are kind of desperate to be young again. She's got like this German accent. Yeah. Anyway, she's very exotic looking, and but for some reason she has this German accent.
Yeah. All right, we're coming to the end. I'm someone who, with my project Dionysophy, has turned around the idea of the Faustian quite a bit. It's probably one of the central theme of Dionysophy, which is to make wisdom out of the Faustian, to make wisdom out of the Dionysian, and to a certain degree making wisdom out of the Votanic, because those three comes together in, let's say, their utility, their madness, their unstoppable nature. It's a package, right? So I would like to say something about this, but first, maybe you want to conclude. So what would be your final words on this?
I guess mine is a bit more sort of just general. I would just say that, despite like this kind of critical overview of the film, I did enjoy it. I mean, as much as you could say enjoy a movie
Yeah, I enjoy a horror movie. Yeah.
that's like so wild, as it is. I like that it was this kind of unique, it had this uniqueness. You can see something special going on. She is using references that are kind of like fun in a way, but like also her own, you could say like that it's, using the colors or using the shots and it's different, it's innovative as well, like, the way that she's kind of using her resources. And so there is something cool about that. I would keep her in mind, let's say, if to see what she's doing next. I mean, having said that, based off this movie, like that, I mean, that's also kind of an interesting thing to see as well, like based off the movie that she's just made, what the next one is going to be like, and if it's going to kind of be similar in a way, if she's working around that same theme and hasn't like jumped out of that yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I like that it's kind of got this multi-layer narrative going on that you can kind of see it from all those angles and kind of be happy with it, like for some people, let's say. But obviously, like, maybe for people like us, it's like, there's something, but it's just, I don't know what. Well, hopefully this kind of can try to like alleviate some of that where it's like, I just don't know what it is. And it's like that, yeah, that this could be it. I feel like this is it, but, just like with something that like Lynch would say, it's like, you don't want to like reveal too much of the mystery or something. You don't want to anyway, hopefully this is kind of more like helpful for reflection rather than just to be like, hey, this is it and this is the meaning and off you go. It's like it should actually be something to ponder on, I suppose.
Yeah, for me, like I'm a bit more strict with that because I believe that people live in stories. And so when I watch a movie like The Substance, I will ask myself a silly question, but that's important for me. Is like, should a person live in a story like this? Is it a story worth telling? What does it mean to embody that story, to experience it through and through? Outside of the fact that it's a horror movie and it's technically impressive, there's a sense that this is a drama, this is a tragedy, this is a problem. This story is a problem. And so I'm going to open this question a bit in a provocative manner. Was it worth it to tell the story, the substance, if it's such a drama, if it's so inconclusive? The answer to this is both yes and no. As we've said with the Medusa element, this story has, from my perspective, it's something that needs an answer. It's a problem that's trying to call an answer forward. And I hope that with this article we've done justice to it. And so, in one way, no, it wasn't worth telling the story if did not have an answer. But yes, it was worth telling the story now that we have an answer. That's kind of the point I'm staying. So now we're getting into the problem of the Faustian. In Faust, why does Faust ends up with the devil? And there is a metaphysical answer to this in the book of Faust. This is how it starts. It starts in heaven, and Mephistopheles is talking to the Lord, right, which is kind of a god figure. And Mephistopheles has this spirit of negation, like humans live in misery. Like, don't you want to end it all? And the Lord says, the only thing you can do is accuse. But do you know Faust? Faust is my good servant, and he will help you. And Mephisto says, no, no, would you care to bet on that? And then the Lord responds, that's from the book, I shan't, I promise, interfere. Man errs as long as he strives. Man is too apt to sink into mere satisfaction. A total standstill is his constant wish. So I'm glad to give him a devil for his own good, to prod and poke and incite him as a devil should. So the Lord says, okay, you can have Faust because the problem is not someone who makes mistakes. The real problem is someone who does not do anything. It's a man who sinks into satisfaction. I repeat the line, a total standstill is his constant wish. So the reason for a devil in Faust, the metaphysical answer, because this is happening in heaven, it's preferable to deal with the devil than to do nothing.
It's also the devil makes work of idle hands. I think that's the saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You find this in Meister Eckhart as well, that God is more likely to forgive you for what you've done than if you have not done anything. I don't remember the quote exactly, but yeah. In fact, you find this in Faust. He opens the Bible, and the line, in the beginning was the word, and he's like, no, no, I don't like this line. Maybe it should be, in the beginning was the mind. And it's like, no, I don't like this. Oh, in the beginning was the force. In the beginning was power. Depends on the translation. No, an instinct warns me. It will not do. The spirit speaks. I see how it must read. and boldly write, "In the beginning was the deed." So here we kind of have a change of the gospel. The deed replaced the word, right? It's a total change that action is actually
Mm,
preferable to the word. This constitutes the basis of the Faustian element that action is its own propulsion into life, right? This is where I would end up with this movie is that what Coralie Fargeat has done is she has entered into this Faustian element and kind of like Wotan, she has sacrificed an eye to, let's say, the unconscious. And so she has made this movie with being half blind, but her other eye is found in the unconscious. And with this other eye's sacrifice to the unconscious, she's revealed a visionary movie, a visionary experience that is the bringer of culture. And I believe this is how you redeem a movie like this. And despite the fact that it's a tragedy, despite the fact it's a problem, despite the fact that there's so much pathology, there's actually enough to make culture out of this. There's enough to make wisdom out of this. She has done great service to that. And the problem of the Faustian is so deep that as of today, there's no answer. Our best people, Goethe, our best people have worked on this issue, and we do not know how to solve it. It looks very, very difficult. If this task is delegated to the imagination, and this is the best we can get, that reveals how deeply troubling it is to come to an answer with the Faustian problem that's plaguing Germany. All right, so that's what I wanted to say about this. Sadly enough, I did not fully enjoy the movie myself. I'm not a fan of body horror, so I'm not the right person for that. But I think the substance has substance.
ah,
Yeah, sorry for the pun, but yeah, it does.
I think I made it a few times in the article.
All right.
To bring this to a close, hopefully you enjoyed our discussion. I know it was a lot, and it is a lot, especially once you really dive into the movie and what it's actually trying to say, and not all of the surface things that have come out already about it. Yeah, I feel like it's definitely worth a watch, even if it's really not your thing, because there is something to get out of it. Yep. So thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Wonder what the next one's going to be.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.